Hi, everyone. Welcome to Light Haven, the podcast for all things spiritual, mystical, and energetic. I'm Ruth, mystery student towards the awakening of consciousness.
And I am Bianca, light worker and astrology enthusiast.
The title of this episode is We Live in a Spiritual Cosmos, Unveiling the Mystery. We wanted to discuss paranormal activity. Of course, we can't cover all the aspects of this topic as it's simply too broad, but we at least wanted to approach this subject, especially around ghosts, life after death, ESP, maybe a little bit about mediumship, how energy ties into it as well. But I do think we'll definitely talk about these things more in the future too.
And I wanted to start by laying the foundation of what I believe, because it will make it easier to understand the things that I say after this point. I believe that we all have an eternal soul. This soul has come here to Earth to experience life in a physical body and accomplish certain goals. The body will eventually die, but our soul lives on. Now, I grew up in a very religious household, and we were taught that once we die, we enter, quote unquote, the spirit world, where we will wait to be judged and then be exalted, pretty much. It is believed that this spirit world is actually here on Earth. So we essentially have spirits who are just hanging around waiting for Judgment Day.
That'd be a long time.
Yeah. Now, as of right now, I'm not following any organized religion, but that doesn't mean I've completely done away with all of those beliefs that I was taught growing up. There are some people who did not grow up with any spiritual kind of belief system and may be unaware of any other realm. It isn't until something sudden or unusual happens, they take notice and start to question things.
I think it would also be good for me to share what I personally believe, just for the record.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
yes,
just
please.
to clarify.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. I think a lot of people in the spiritual movement did come from religious backgrounds.
I've noticed that too, yeah.
Maybe because we're more open, but we outgrow those rules and things that we were taught because we see something
those
broader.
Paradigms, it's like a shift in perception, and we start to question things and get a broader view of the different things. So yes, I totally understand that.
Yeah, so definitely I was raised in a Christian household, but as I mentioned before, there was a spiritual aspect to it. So we were taught about the spirit world. Over time, I've come to the sense where, because I love science, how I can harmonize science and what I intuitively feel about the world around me. And the thing that really helped me gain a deeper understanding were both quantum physics and the idea of energy. Because all the religions have a god, and it would make so much sense if this wasn't a guy in the sky as opposed to the highest source energy where we all come from. So I definitely believe that we have an origin, and it would be some kind of energy that's powerful enough to manifest everything here. I personally believe that we are also empowered and sovereign to a degree. We have much more power than we think that we do.
100%. Yeah.
So from that perspective, in some way, technically, we are God. And that's definitely what I believe. It sounds very sacrilegious, but I don't mean it in that way. It's more about being empowered and knowing about energy and working with it. And in terms of where we go when we die, we had a similar teaching when I was growing up to you, except in our teaching, the spirits weren't hanging around. They were in heaven if they were good and in hell if they were bad.
They go straight to
Yeah, they go
heaven or
straight to one place or the other.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've heard the Seventh-day Adventists believe that when you die, it's just black until Judgment Day. So you don't, they say, what happens when you're sleeping? It's black, right? There's nothing there. So in the same way...
Well, we could...
you could be dreaming, you could be astral projecting. Yeah, so that's one idea, and it just shows you that there are lots of different ideas out there. Personally, I don't think that I could say that I knew with certainty what the truth was, because I haven't got into investigating all that yet. I think I would need to have a very robust methodology. I've heard astral projectors have investigated and made some findings, which is great. And I like to look at those findings, but until it's proven to me, I just look at all ideas.
And it's so important to have a critical mind. But I know the word critical has a negative connotation to it, but I say critical thinking just as a way of describing or expressing having an open mind and not just believing every little thing that's told to you, but also, just being, the most important thing is being open to different ideas, new ideas, and just open and receptive to knowledge in general. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can look at an idea without adopting it.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't need to get defensive about it. It's just an idea. So I do think that we continue after we die, but I think it's not how we imagine. And that's as far as I can intuitively sense. Everything else we'll have to find out.
Right.
Yes, because there's so many conflicting theories on it. So I don't think I could say with certainty it's got to be this way. But I like looking at all the theories. They're very fascinating.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, when I was saying about people who may not be aware of any other realm other than the physical realm that they're currently in, sometimes they're just going about their life asleep, or I would say unconscious, and it's not until something sudden happens to them or they encounter something that is unusual that makes them think or question, what did they just see? And they start thinking, well, maybe it's paranormal activity, right? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, it's interesting because I was raised to believe in the spirit world, but until you encounter it, you might have secret doubts to say, yes, I believe in it, but it's not the same as seeing. It's said that we all have the ability to contact the other realms, but this ability has been atrophied. So we don't know how to tap into those senses. When I was 16, I went to a Christian camp and I met another girl there who claimed to be able to contact the spirit world. We were friends during the camp, but I noticed that she had a darkness about her.
Yeah.
It made me uncomfortable, but at the same time, she was so nice. So it was weird. It was like she was nice and friendly, but obviously my energetic senses were picking up something.
Yeah, exactly. I think I understand what you mean, where you can come across someone who is very pleasant, but you just feel like there's more underneath. There's something hidden, or there's you sense a dark side. You can't explain why, and maybe it's that, your energetic fields, one of the many that we have, is picking up on something. It's like trying to connect to us, saying, Bianca, just be mindful.
Yeah, be careful.
Be wary. Yeah, be wary of her.
That's right.
Yeah.
So she and her sister both claimed to have the ability to contact spirits. And they both said that they could see these other dimensional beings at any time. And they weren't always talking to them, but they could always see them. And her younger sister wasn't at the camp, but she was telling me stories. And of course, I was fascinated. I didn't believe a word of it, but I just liked a good story. So I just went, oh yeah, tell me more. Oh, that really? What happened? And in the back of my head, I was thinking, sure. Oh, so fascinating. Yes, I believe you. And she said that her sister had a friend who was a demon. And,
wow.
And for a Christian, that's a huge red flag.
Yeah.
And I went, really? Well, what's that about? And she said, well, people are saying it's a demon, but we just say it's her friend. And so it could be that it was a spirit who was her friend, but the religious lens was, calling it out as being something bad when it wasn't.
Right.
I don't know. I wasn't there. But apparently they said that they had a friend who visited them who didn't believe any of their stories, and her sister specifically called up or conjured the friend to the spirit to manifest visually for their other friend who couldn't see her to prove it. And when the friend saw the apparition, she freaked out and she left the house and she never came back and she never wanted to be their friend again. So she was that spooked.
Wow.
According to the story. And I went, wow, that's so interesting. Oh, how exciting. But I still don't believe you. And so I guess I should give an alias to this girl. I will call her Sarah. That's not her name, but I don't know where she is or what she's doing now, but I won't name her here. So Sarah then began to tell me, once she could see that I was listening to her stories, she thought it would be her duty to tell me whenever something was around us. And it wouldn't be all the time, but occasionally she would say, oh, there's a girl over there, or there's a lady over there, and they're not saying anything, they're just sitting there, I can see them. So most of these apparitions that she could see didn't engage with her, but she had the fortunate or unfortunate ability to see all of them.
Right.
And I remember just getting used to it. Okay, that's how Sarah is. Sarah talks about the spirits she can see. Cool, whatever. And we moved on and we talked about boys and all the other things that we were interested in. But she carried on. Yes, when you're 16, right? That's how it goes.
Right.
But on the last night of the camp, there were lots of young people just sitting around, hanging out, and she and I went out onto this balcony. It was this massive patio, and the sky was a beautiful, dark, open, clear sky. There was like some kind of outdoor furniture where you could recline heavily, and we were looking up at the stars and just talking about life. And she was telling me about her parents and things she was unhappy with in her life. And then she said, oh, there's these black things up in the sky, and they watch over this part of the world, and it's their territory. They're not necessarily good, but they're just trying to say, hey, we're here and this is our territory. We look after it. And I said, oh, okay. Then she got up and went to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. So we had spent the past hour talking about different things, some things negative, some things supernatural. So you could say that my energy was maybe tapped into the wrong frequency.
Yeah.
And now I was alone in the dark outside, looking up at the sky. And all of a sudden, I started to hear this. I started to feel this immense fear out of nowhere. And that's a typical sign that something bad is visiting. So I was lying there going, why am I tensing up with fear? And as I was looking up into the sky, I just saw this big dragon head look at me.
Wow.
As if to say, yes, I'm here, don't you know? This is my spot.
Yeah, you're in my territory now.
Yeah. And he winked at me with an evil wink, like, watch out, this is my space. And then he disappeared. I was so stunned and shocked that I didn't know what to make of it. And I lay there frozen, my heart was pounding, and I just thought, what on earth did I just see?
Yeah.
Oh my God. And you know when you're afraid and you try and tell yourself to not be scared? That's what I was doing, because I was going, you're 16, you shouldn't be scared out here by yourself. But you could count 3, 2, 1, and then I leapt up off the chair and I came running into the house screaming. I was that terrified.
Wow.
And then all of the other young people, of course, came to ask me what happened.
Like, what's going on?
And
what
I had
happened?
to explain to them. And I was just in total shock. And because it was a Christian camp, they prayed for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Did anything paranormal ever happen for you in the past?
Now that if I think about it, something did happen to me. I don't want to say happened to me. I experienced something earlier this year where it was a phase of my life where I was deep in meditation. And I was I was just in a very zen phase of my life. It was difficult, but I felt very at peace inside myself and very tapped in to the other realms. I'm not sure how to describe it. And I thought one night I had the impression that I wanted to contact, or this is me being intentional here. I wanted to intentionally make contact with my ancestors or my deceased loved ones. And so I did this guided meditation that so I was going through the process, and I was connecting, but I didn't connect with ancestors that I thought I was going to connect with, but I did make contact with somebody, and he was an older man, I would say in his early 50s, and he looked like he could have been one of my relatives, but I knew that he wasn't. So he was Māori descent. And I asked him for his name, but he didn't tell me. But I could sense that he was very cheeky. Like, he just seemed very happy-go-lucky, very playful. Just, I don't know how to describe it, but he just seemed like someone who's just, he's like the type of uncle that would just tell you a really funny joke, and didn't take things too seriously. So I thought, okay, well, after the meditation ended, I was like, well, I didn't connect with any of my deceased loved ones, but I did reach some spirit of some kind.
Whoever it was.
Yeah, whoever that was. But the next day, he would appear in my mind, and I worked from home a lot early in the year. So I was working from home, and he would just appear in my head, and then
did he talk?
No, he would just hang around. Like, he would just linger, and he would just linger. And how I knew that he would be around me is because my hairs on my arms would stick up, and I would get goosebumps for no reason at all. I'd be like deep in my work, and then his face would just show up in my mind's eye, and then I would get goosebumps, and I would feel like this cooling energy, like this cool breeze, and I was just like, oh, not you again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was actually kind of a strange experience. And I went and I visited a psychic, a well-known psychic. She was on a TV series just this year. After I saw her, though, I'm forgetting the name of it. Her name is Kimberly Stewart. She's unwell right now, so she's not taking on clients anymore. She's just focusing on her health, but she does other things like Reiki and tarot reading and crystal healing. So she does a whole wide range of things. Anyway, when I consulted with her, I asked her about my encounter with this spirit, and I was like, why is he hanging around me? Like, he's not bothering me, he's fine, but like, what is going on? And you know, what's happening? And she's like, yeah, so there are spirits around us, and she said that once they know that you can sense them, they will keep coming back to you because they want to be seen, or they want to be acknowledged, or maybe they have a message to share, and it may not be the message that if they want to share a message, it may not be for you, it might be for somebody else, but it's like they're wandering around being like, who can see me? Like, who can I go to? You know, who can give me some attention? And so because you show physical signs that you acknowledge that his presence, he's coming to you more regularly now, because you now know how to sense him, and he knows how to get your attention. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I don't mind, but it was just a strange experience for me, and one that I was like, this is the first time that I've had something like that happen. And then it stopped when I moved houses.
Right.
So yeah,
He
didn't follow me.
You didn't help him pass on his message. He's got to find someone else.
I think he just wanted a friend.
Aww. Poor playful uncle.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just like, this is just such a funny experience, and one that I haven't shared with many people because I just know I'm going to get weird looks.
Well, you know, when you were telling this story,
yeah,
it reminded me that my sister had someone coming around bothering her for a while.
Oh,
but she didn't ask. It just came.
Yeah.
And I don't think we worked out who it was. She reckons it was our grandfather, our paternal grandfather, and he would always come and stand at the end of the bed. But she couldn't see him physically, but it was the same thing, like where you can see it in your mind's eye and you just feel something there really strongly.
Yeah.
And she kept waking up. So he was waking her up.
Oh,
and that's
wow.
why she started to get really annoyed, and she told him to go away.
Oh, no.
So we don't know what he wanted.
Oh, yeah, you always have to ask. Firstly, ask like what their name is. Obviously they can't talk, but they could reveal, if they want to, they could reveal their name either like in your mind's eye, or somehow if you're outside, they could show you something, or I don't know, just through impressions tell you what their name is, or they don't have to tell you their name, and then you could ask them like, what do you want? What do you want? Like, why do you keep bothering me? So Ruth, you have an interesting idea on what ghosts are. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. We discussed in our previous episode that we are not the physical body, but we have other components. This is an idea that I'm exploring. As I said before, a lot of this stuff is very hard to verify. So our ideas and our understanding can evolve over time. What I have come across right now that makes a lot of sense to me is obviously you have all of your layers and aspects to yourself. And the very, very core part of you, which we talked about last time, was the essence or the divine spark. And that's the part that you hear those Buddhist monks went to their bliss place and they found that we are all pure and beautiful at our core. That's that divine spark. So that part of you, I am feeling that that's a part of you that's forever. That's a kind of very pure, perfect energy. And everything else can come and go according to the circumstances. That said, what is a ghost? We have a lot of stories about people contacting loved ones, contacting phantoms, good and bad, positive and negative. The idea that is resonating with me most right now is that a lot of, and I wouldn't say all because case by case, right? A lot of these phantoms could be the egoic psychic material that is running around doing the same things that they were doing when they were alive, because this energetic material has not been processed or gone where it needs to go. So it's like a trapped, stuck lower part of ourselves. And I'm not saying that that's the only way to look at it, but that's one idea. And the reason why a lot of people think that is because some mediums and psychics and even astral projectors who tried to investigate and talk with a lot of spirits found that these spirits, a lot of them can't recall their name, don't know where they are, don't know that they're deceased, don't know where they're from. I remember listening to a psychic podcast where this psychic would see a lot of spirits coming through her house. And when she first had her psychic abilities come online, it was very sudden. She didn't ask for it. It just happened like a freak thing, you know, something clicked and it started.
She got struck by lightning.
Yeah, I don't know what happened in her energetic body or what happened, but she suddenly became psychic and she got really excited. Wow, look at all these people that are walking through my house all the time. Let me try and talk to one. So she tried, and 95% of them couldn't have a proper conversation with her and presented all those symptoms of not being able to remember their name, not remembering where they were from, not knowing what they were doing, where they were going, anything. And so she couldn't talk to them. It was pointless. So if you can talk to someone on the other side that's very clear, then you know it's they're not lost. They know where they're from and what they're doing and why they're meeting with you. But those things that get stuck and roam around, it's good to know that the true essential part of us is not stuck somewhere.
I really like how you said that, because as you were talking, it reminded me of this question that was asked, and I can't remember who it was or what the situation was, but basically the question was around haunted houses. Like, oh, why can people hear like a screaming baby or sense something like a grandmother walking up and down the stairwell, or those freakish, scary things that you'd expect that go on in a haunted house. And I was told something to that effect of, it is traces of the vibrations of the people that once occupied that home, that are trapped or that are unresolved or I'm not sure how else.
Yeah, unprocessed.
Yeah, unprocessed. They're still there. And we are picking up on that vibrational frequency if we are sensitive enough to pick up on it. And so it could have been that baby was crying, and I don't know, maybe there was a lot of traumatic experiences that had gone on in that room. Or maybe the stairwell that the grandmother goes up and down. Maybe that was a stairwell she had gone up and down for the past 80 years.
Yeah, it was a very ingrained pattern.
Ingrained pattern, traces of that energetic vibrational frequency still lingering.
That's right.
Yeah.
And again, I don't remember the name of that psychic or podcast, but those beings that she experimented with trying to communicate with, it seemed like they were just dissolving over time. So first, if they were fresh, they could remember things, but then over time, then they would forget more and more, and eventually they would just disappear.
Okay.
So that is some of what I know and what I've heard about ghosts. It would be good to talk about how you rectify that idea with the idea of reincarnation.
Yeah, because I believe in reincarnation. And what do you is that something you believe in?
I do believe in it in some form.
Yeah.
I definitely think, because we know that energy can't be destroyed, it can be transformed into different forms, but it has to go somewhere. So when we talked about that divine spark or that eternal part of you, it has to go somewhere, but it doesn't necessarily need to be Bianca. It can be anything, right? So from that perspective, that fits really well with the laws of physics and of energy, that there is an eternal part of you, and if you are in the wheel of reincarnation, then that part will be coming back. So let's unpack this a little bit. Mm-hmm. There's the wheel of samsara. I'm sure you've heard of that. Or maybe not everyone. Maybe not everyone has.
I'm drawing a blank.
Okay.
No.
So
please tell me.
That's all good. So the wheel of samsara is referring to the endless cycle of reincarnation if we haven't ascended. Here's a fun thing to Google: the soul trap. Have you seen those videos?
I don't go Googling things like that, so I have not seen it.
Okay.
But
yes,
please explain.
So the soul trap is probably the modern version of people grappling with the idea of reincarnation, and they've invented some story that they tell themselves to try and help them understand it. And it basically says that our souls, which are pure light, are trapped here on earth, and we keep getting told we need to reincarnate to learn, but actually we don't need to learn, we're perfect, and we're just trapped here, and we keep coming back. I don't really like that idea, because I think it's quite negative, and it doesn't give us hope or a way out. And they even talk about, don't go towards the light. They have all these tips, which who knows where they got them from.
Yeah.
They say, don't look back, don't go in the tunnel, don't do this, don't do that, and then you'll escape the trap. But without evidence or personal experience, I would take that with a grain of salt. The Wheel of Samsara is a very established idea because a lot of practitioners who meditated very deeply and had true comprehension of the nature of the universe then came back to tell us that reincarnation or rebirth, however you want to call it, is a real thing. The great debate is between Buddhism and the Hindu train of thought. So in Hindu religions, or varieties of them, they believe that you, like Bianca or Ruth, that is the thing that comes back. And in Buddhism, they say that's not the thing that comes back. So they expressly call it rebirth, not reincarnation.
Okay.
So people studying it will say, okay, well, what is the thing that comes back? What is it then if it's not me? And the Buddhists say, it's your karma that comes back. So the karma is the result of all previous actions.
Right.
So it's kind of like splitting hairs, I think, because consciousness is a constant in the universe. So you can think of it like a little boat traveling through a journey. You're the boat, but whatever you want to call it, whether it's consciousness or energy or karma, you're that thing that reincarnates. And in rebirth, in the idea of rebirth, your personality doesn't get to reincarnate, but all your memories are still there in the universal consciousness, and that's why people who do certain modalities can go back and see their previous lives.
Ah, yes. I've heard about past life regression. Yeah.
Yes. So
okay. So which side are you for?
Me personally, I can't pick a side because I can't prove either side. I think they're both very interesting, and until my consciousness is awake enough to just intuitively know, I'm open. So I look at both ideas. I think they both have validity to them. There's another idea that doesn't necessarily come from these schools of thoughts, but that is that the ego is the thing that reincarnates, and the ego has trapped your essence, which is your pure light. And you are pure, but you're stuck inside these egoical structures, and your ascension is when you can liberate yourself fully from your ego. So I think that's a very practical view, whether it's true or not, because it will encourage people to be better and to grow.
Now, we have an episode coming up on reincarnation where we will take a deeper look into some of these aspects, and I have a bit of an astrological lens on that too, so we can see at that point how it fits into those structures of those different ideologies. What would you call them?
I think they're different views.
Different views on reincarnation. So, yeah.
Yes, so those ghosts, you could essentially say, are something that's trapped. Whether you call it the person or their energy, it's something that's trapped. They could be in between reincarnations, and usually, like you said, it's some unfinished business or unresolved issue, or there was trauma that caused a great energetic shock which locked in those frequencies. Because at the end of the day, to me, everything is energy. So we're energy, and those trapped beings are just trapped energy.
Yeah. I had a story that I wanted to share
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. Okay. Now, this was a story that I had found. It's not a story of someone that I know personally, and the story is being told by a mother who had tragically lost her daughter, who had passed away, and she passed away instantaneously. Okay, so, and I just feel like I want to read it as if I was the mother, just to do the story justice. So, yeah. So, my daughter was involved in an accident and died instantly. She was not aware she was gone. It took almost a month of seeing her, hearing her, finding things left around of hers, until one day I was walking down the hallway and she calls me to the doorway. I stop, lean against the door frame, and she proceeds to talk to me. Now, mind you, I can see her, smell her. The bathroom is damp as A shower had just been taken. She's sitting on the toilet backwards, putting her eye makeup on, as she had a makeup mirror on the back of the toilet. Just for your information, she was 18 years old, so she was
a teenager,
just a
basically.
teenager, yeah, young adult. I could see her goosebumps, freckles, drips from the shower still on her shoulders. Her hair was wrapped in a towel. She had on her jeans, belt, and bra. Her feet were bare. She says to me, "Mum, can you make me a doctor's appointment?" I asked, "What's the matter?" She tells me to look at her wrist as she holds out the underside of her arm and says, "Look, my skin is turning a grey colour." I had her arm in my hands and ran my fingers over her skin. I told her there was nothing the doctor could do, as it was turning grey because she had died. We sat, Indian style, facing and holding each other, crying and rocking together. Her hair that was tied up in a towel had fallen off. I could smell her freshly shampooed hair, taste her tears, looked into her eyes, then the brightest white light engulfed us. She was gone, and I was now in my bedroom, sitting straight up, crying. Was it a dream? No. I got up off the bed, walked down the same hallway towards the bathroom, which had the door open and the light was on. On the floor was a wet towel. A shower had just been taken. There was still moisture on the mirror. My daughter was gone. I had to tell her she was gone. So, yes, sometimes we do not cross over until we are told that we have died.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm vibing with that. I think they're onto something there. And I would tend to believe someone like that if they've had that experience, that it was real.
Absolutely. It made sense if she, just given the nature of how she passed so quickly, you know.
Yeah, that she just didn't process that she was gone.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. And it reminds me, I had heard someone who was deep in meditation talk about his experience where he didn't know where he was going to go when he was meditating, but he found himself in this dark room and he saw a man in the corner crying. And this is all in the meditative experience, but he didn't know who he was. So he went over to him and put his hand on his shoulder. And the man turned around and he realized it was his uncle who had passed away 20 years ago. Wow. And he was just crying in the corner in this plain dark room, nothing else there. And so suddenly the nephew felt this strong urge to tell his uncle where to go. And he said, "Uncle, go towards the light." And all of a sudden a light began to appear in the corner of the room. Wow. And then his uncle realized where he was supposed to go, and he looked up and he went towards the light, and then he was gone.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting that the idea of a lost spirit or soul that didn't know where they were supposed to go, or something traumatic happened, and they need that help from someone who can guide them and direct them so they can get out of that position.
Exactly.
I think this idea was truly popularized back in 1975 when Dr. Raymond Moody published the book Life After Life. He was a doctor from the College of Georgia, and he had studied philosophy and some other things, but he carried out some very important research that helped to validate the whole idea of some kind of life after we pass from the physical plane. What they did was if you want to research life after death, I think you're hard-pressed to find subjects to interview because we don't know how to talk to the dead.
For obvious reasons.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't know how to talk to the dead.
No. But Dr. Moody was adamant that we need to study this because it concerns us all. We're all going there. Why can't we find out about it? So they decided to find someone who came close to death, and that was as close as we were going to get. And it needed to be someone who was clinically dead and then was resuscitated or revived in hospital. And then he wanted to ask them what they saw. They interviewed people from all over the world in different cultures and with different religious backgrounds. That was very important because your religious background can shape the way you understand your experience, which it did for these people. But what Dr. Moody did was, I'm going to take all the stories and I'm going to look for commonalities. And those commonalities will help us to get closer to potentially what actually goes on the other side. So this was a groundbreaking discovery because all of those things that we take for granted now, the long tunnel, the white light, the being of love, reviewing your life, and being told that the purpose of life is love, those were the themes that featured. And some of the big proofs were people who had gone to the other side were able to report back things that they shouldn't have known.
Yeah.
Because they were technically or they were clinically deceased at the time when this information would have been accessible. And that included what was happening in the room after they had been declared deceased, and also conversations of people, whether in the hospital or somewhere else at the same time. And there was one story that I really remember because that story was real proof for me, and that was that one of the women who passed away, she floated up out of the building because she was passing over, not knowing that they were going to revive her and she was going to come back. And as she was floating out of the building, she looked back at the hospital, and there was some kind of either a ledge or the roof, I can't remember where it was, but it was something on the exterior of the building, and there was a surgical glove, a green surgical glove that had just been chucked there. So when she was revived and was being interviewed immediately after, and the doctors and nurses said, "Oh, well, you must have imagined that," she said, "No, I'm not imagining it. You want proof? I saw a glove when I was floating outside the building. Go find it." So they went and found this glove.
All right.
There was no way for her to have known that from the bottom of the building, or if she lived nearby. There'd be no way. And of course, there were lots of other stories about similar things.
Yeah.
So that did it for me. I couldn't tell you what I believe about all the specifics of what happens after you die, but definitely the phenomena that were discussed in the Life After Life book by Dr. Moody, I'm pretty convinced in those. I want to share a story just
go for it.
on
Please.
the whole topic of ghosts and people getting trapped. It's actually a story from one of my sisters, but I think all of us had different experiences with the spirit realm or these kinds of paranormal things. And she was someone in the family who was able to experience something from the other side as well. So she and her husband are both DJs, and this was in Shenzhen in China, and they at the time were running a company that hosted parties, and they were always looking for a way to make a party a different kind of experience, something unusual or unique. and they liked picking interesting venues. So they would have parties on the beach, or they would find some big spot under a bridge or somewhere that was very grunge and would suit. He liked underground music, so they wanted something that would vibe with that. And they found not a haunted house, but they found an old abandoned house. And then when they investigated if they could use it as a party venue, they were told that don't go into that house because it's haunted. And of course, from what I remember, from what she told me, was that David ignored that and went and hosted a party there anyway. And everyone who went to the party felt that there was something there, which added to the the party theme and the mood. But she still felt really creeped out by this house. And because of our Christian upbringing, we were taught that if a soul got trapped, you should try and help it. You should try and pray to God and help it get free. And they asked around to find out where did those ghosts come from? What was the story behind it? And they were told that some girls were murdered in that house. And that was that very terrible energy, that pain and screaming that you could sense in that house. So she did her version of a cleanse, and when they went back to that house later, all of that energy was gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was no longer, that energy was able to be released, and it was able to...
Yeah.
Yeah.
She prayed for them to cross over, and then they were gone.
Wow.
Yeah, so...
That's really cool.
I know that we're talking a lot about the deceased and spirits, and some psychics communicate with deceased spirits. I heard this theory that some of them could possibly be contacting the lower energetic components of the deceased loved one. And that's kind of what we mentioned before, that you have a higher self and a lower self, and it's that energy that's low down. But I think when you are trying to work with these realms, each of us has to make our own decisions and use our intuition to guide us. And I want to say that there is actually so much beauty and light in these other realms, so we just need to have good judgment.
Yeah. I think we'll know if we are tapping into some darker forces.
Yes, that's right. And people are scared of ghosts and apparitions, but to me, it's good to know about these things.
Absolutely.
So we can know that there's another aspect.
To be aware that it's not just all love and light out there.
Yeah. But it's also good to just know about ghosts and the afterlife, because it helps inform you how you live your life now. If you know that there is potentially somewhere else that you're going to go after, and if you did believe in karma, then you might work with that idea around how you conduct yourself in the here and now. So the most important thing for me is that we can have a better life if we concern ourselves with becoming conscious and finding a spiritual path that will lead us to the light.
Yeah, I also think as much as we absolutely should be focusing on connecting to our higher selves and living a conscious life, I also feel that we can also receive guidance from loved ones who have passed and who are already on the other side, because if there's anyone who would be able to see what life experience you're about to go into, it's them. And this doesn't seem like such a far-fetched thing to believe in, because if you think about it, when we pass on, our physical body becomes one with the earth, but our soul lives on. So all that is happening is there's a shift in consciousness and vibrational patterns of energy going from physical to the metaphysical realm, because they still exist in the metaphysical realm. They could connect to us at any time, and this all seems very idealistic, but it gets a little bit more complicated when we add in that whole concept of reincarnation. Yes. Like I said, we'll have an episode on this coming up where we explore this idea from a different angle. But there's this idea in the spiritual community that the veil is thinner for children, especially under the age of 7. This is because, or I think it's because they don't have any preconceived notions about what life should be like. They're still discovering themselves and their place in this world, and they're still quite connected to the spirit world. And if you are a parent with a child that is showing signs of psychic abilities, my suggestion is just to stay open and receptive to what your child is telling you. Ask them questions about their experience. Ask them, what did you see? How did it make you feel? And so Cole, my oldest, he's 12 years old now. He has had experiences where he sees things.
Wow.
Yeah, he's very scared of the dark and hates sleeping alone. Actually, him and Penny have shared a room for the longest time since they were very young. And I remember one time I asked him, why are you so scared of the dark? And he said it's because he hears people talking.
Oof.
And I'm like, I asked, what people? And he's like, the people in the room. And I'm like, what are they doing in the room? And he's like, they're just hanging around talking with each other. And so I just face the wall so I don't have to see them.
That's a good strategy.
Yeah. Now, I only just got into astrology within the past year, and so it was only recently I discovered that Cole's moon is conjunct Neptune in his first house. So conjunct is an aspect where one planet is literally on top of another.
Right.
And so when one planet is on top of another, it's like an infusion of those energies, and it's like a megamorphosis of some sort of the moon's archetypal energy and Neptune's archetypal energy. So for me, it all made complete sense because the moon represents our emotions and our feelings, and Neptune is the planet of dreams, spirituality, illusions, aspirations. And so if you connect both of those together, it just indicates that his abilities in these theme type subjects are heightened, are a lot more stronger than the average person. So yeah,
I think that's a great gift. I know probably he doesn't think that right now, but if he can stay connected with that ability and not lose it as he grows up, then it could have a function. It could be useful for him when he's older to know what is going on that other people can't see.
Absolutely. And because I am aware of this, and I know how he how he places a lot of importance on trying to be accepted in his social group, and it's very normal for preteens and teenagers to feel this way, right? They want to be accepted in their group. So he tends to tell himself that, or talk himself out of what he's experiencing. And he's like, oh, it's just because I was watching some scary YouTube videos and that's why I hear and see ghosts. And I'm just like, no, like, Cole, like, it's stop, like, you don't have to try and tell yourself that you're delusioned. Like, it's okay, it's okay to experience what you're experiencing. You don't need to blame it on something else, But there was one other time that I had this conversation with him. It was when my grandfather passed away in January this year, 2023. But I think when this episode gets released, it might be on New Year's 2024. So January 2023, my grandfather passed away. And now, he wasn't a very good person in his life when he was younger. In his 20s and 30s, he was very disruptive to the family and had a lot of aggression and addictions and things like that. He turned his life around later on in life, but he had, he was quite, he had a lot of inner turmoil when he was in his first half of his life. And so what I thought was, when me and my children were making our way down to the funeral, it's a 7-hour drive, so we had plenty of time in the car ride to talk about what to expect when we go there. So I said to Cole, I was like, look, we're going to this funeral. There's going to be a lot of dense energy around, and you might feel a little, you might feel like there's a lot of darkness or dark energy. I don't know how to describe it, but I explained it to him in a way that he could understand the gist of what I was trying to say. And I said, but I just want you to know that I'm always here. I'm always here. If you ever feel anything or if you see anything, I'm right here by your side. You are safe. If you ever feel scared, you can always come to me and tell me how you're feeling. But I just want you to know that you are safe, and I'm here, and I'm protecting you, but I'm a mum, I'm your mum, and and I love you, and and you'll always be safe with me. And so, but I just had to say that to him because I know how the veil is quite thin with him, and how it's just so easy for him to pick up on spirits and things around him. So needless to say, it went very great, and it was such a good energy, a good vibe when we went down there to visit the rest of our family, and we were reunited with relatives that we hadn't seen in years, and the weather was good for that weekend, and it was just a really lovely experience, and it didn't feel dense or dark. It was just a beautiful send off, and actually after his the night after he was buried, he came to me in a dream. So
oh wow,
it was really nice, actually. I saw him, and we looked at each other, and I said to him, I didn't see you before you passed. And he didn't say anything, but he came to me to embrace me with a hug. And it felt so good because the relationship that I had had with him wasn't the best when I was in my adult years. And so to have that felt really warming to my soul. And then it was like a bright light engulfed us, and I know it kind of sounds similar to the story that I just read out earlier, but it was a bright light engulfed us, it blinded me, and then that's when I woke up, and I was like, oh, that was a dream. But
maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, but maybe it wasn't. Right. Yeah, so.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Did you, now I feel like I know I'm talking a lot here, but I just kind of wanted to like deflect a little bit now. Like, did you have any family members, do you have any family members that have like psychic or clairvoyant abilities?
I wish I could say we all did. I know my dad did. Mm-hmm. It's funny how you end up doing similar things to your parents, because my dad dabbled in astral projection as well growing up, and he also developed a method on how to train psychic abilities as a boy in school. I know. Why?
Wow.
Where did it come from?
Wow.
I don't know.
That's not something you hear every day in the school playground.
No, I have no idea where it came from, but he said he trained a group of boys and they all learned to be psychic. I won't share the method here, but they did have success using this method. And his problem was that once the ability was turned on, he didn't know how to control it.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely something that you need to be able to regulate.
Absolutely. And he found it terribly overwhelming.
Yeah, I could imagine.
So all he knew how to do was to turn it back off.
Yeah. Never to be turned on again. No,
yes,
I don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. So then his life went a different path. Mm-hmm. And later on, I found out that there was a cousin who did have psychic abilities, and this is one of Dad's cousins, so my first cousin. And he's from Dad's generation. I connected with him on Facebook, and he wanted to know things about my life, so we started talking, and somehow we got to talking about psychic abilities, and he said that he had psychic abilities.
Wow.
So I said, really? Well, what happened? What do you see? What do you know?
Yeah.
And he said that he couldn't control them, but they would just he would suddenly know things, and then when he would know them, he would test them in the physical world and find them to be true. He gave me 2 examples, but he said it happens all the time, like every week. The first one was he had this sudden knowing that his adult daughter was going to ask him for money. And then the next day she reached out to him and texted him, and lo and behold, she's asking for a top-up.
He could sense it.
Yeah, it's coming, I know.
Yeah.
The other one was where he was crossing the road with someone, and they were about to cross a busy highway, and it seemed that there were no cars there, so they were just about to step out, and he suddenly saw the person who was with him in a flash in his head. He saw them getting hit by a car.
Wow.
And he pulled on their shirt, their clothing, and pulled them back off just based on what he saw. There were no cars there, but he pulled them back. And then a few moments later, suddenly there was a big accident, because on a motorway, cars come down really quickly, so you can't see them, but then in 10 seconds, they're there.
Right.
So suddenly there was a big accident on the motorway, and they would have been caught in the middle of it. Probably both of them would have died, and if it weren't for that premonition, that would have been the case. So that ability came in very handy.
Wow, yes, that's really cool.
Yeah, so that's pretty much all of the psychic people in our family.
Yeah, I think when we talked in the past about this, it did seem like both of us, like our families, had a lot of links to the psychic, or I don't know, the spiritual psychic capabilities. So, but I just want to divert a little bit here. Another intriguing type of unusual thing is ESP. Now, I don't know much about ESP, and I'm wondering if you could explain a little bit about what that is and what it stands for.
Funny you mention it, because ESP is not a diversion at all.
Oh,
ESP
okay.
is exactly what we've been talking about this whole time.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So ESP stands for extrasensory perception.
Oh, well, there you go then. Yeah.
And it's this ability to contact those other dimensions or energies. And funnily, there are a lot of prominent thinkers who endorse ESP as a possibility, including psychologist William James. You've got Carl Jung.
Oh, I love Carl Jung.
Yeah, and you have Charles Richet. So lots of different known names have said they definitely think that ESP is something that is possible.
Mm-hmm.
There was an experiment amongst many different types of research around it, and this experiment was called the Gansfield experiment. So in the Gansfield experiment, you would usually have a receiver and a sender involved. The receiver is the person who beams the information, the sender is the person who beams information, and the receiver is the one who tries to tap into that energy stream and figure out what information the other person is beaming. To do this kind of experiment, both subjects would be inside completely acoustically isolated rooms. So there's no types of information that could be coming in subconsciously or from the corner of your eye, like sounds or, sensing the movement of the leaves or any other data from the environment. Because this is a common idea where people say, oh, you knew because you could pick up on subtleties in your environment and your subconscious processes it. Mm-hmm. But these people are in separate rooms with the doors closed, and they cover their eyes so they can't see anything either. And then they also are played white noise through headphones. The reason they play white noise is because you could say it's the idea that we're connected to the universal consciousness. Mm-hmm. And when you tune out all of the sensory information, that's where you notice, oh, I can sense something else. That's where all the information sits that we're connected to. So their eyes are covered, the white noise is on, kind of like sensory deprivation, and then they get into that semi-dreamy state. That's where you can contact it. And the sender will either have a video or a photograph that's been chosen randomly. The receiver doesn't know about it. And then the receiver works to report on all of their thoughts and images that they receive. And they would put all kinds of things like decoys and whatnot and run different trials. The interesting thing for me is that a 25% success rate would be considered random. But in some studies, there was a 35% hit rate.
Wow, so that's higher than the random
That's right.
percentage.
So that is actually a very significant difference, because it means even if these people are not fully trained, something is going on here that we need to look at, because these results are not, they're definitely more than random.
Right.
And then you can imagine if you have groups of actually trained psychics, the percentage would be much higher.
Oh yeah, 100%. I would imagine.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this kind of research because I personally feel that it's going to allow the science to catch up with the consciousness movement, and it's going to help explain a lot of what we've known intuitively for generations, and what many modern people in the New Age movement have discovered through their own experimentation and meditation, this inexplicable understanding that seems to be growing within the collective consciousness.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add to the idea of ESP, just listening to you explaining it. There's also the psychic abilities that all of us have within us. Like, it's a skill that comes more naturally to others and looks differently for everyone. For example, some of us receive images in our mind's eye. This is called clairvoyance. Some people can hear inner voices. This is called clairaudience. And so when you mentioned about the white noise, I was like, oh, how is someone that has clairaudience going to be able to pick up on subtleties to be able to know?
Yeah, but
yeah,
it puts them into a state where they almost don't hear the white noise, right, because they're tuning into a different sense.
Yeah. And then, there was another one where people receive sensations through feeling. This is clairsentience. And in the realm of paranormal activities, there are psychic mediums who can communicate with souls who were once here in the physical, and they experienced an earthly death and are now on the other side. There's even a certification process that some mediums can undergo to prove that they have said abilities.
Wow, that's very handy.
Yes, exactly. It's like verification, like I can do what I say I can do, And I think it is important to verify mediums' credentials because before approaching them for help. Now, I was listening to a podcast called Psychic Evolution, and it's hosted by Jamie and Maggie Clark. Now, Jamie Clark is a renowned psychic medium, and they had on one of their episodes when they were talking about they were talking about psychic abilities, and they had Mark Ireland, who is the son of Richard Ireland, who was a well-known medium psychic. So Mark Ireland is not a well-known medium psychic, but it was his father who was. And Richard Ireland has since passed on, but Mark Ireland, he's an author of a few books. One of them is The Persistence of the Soul. It is a book on mediumship, spiritual visitations, and afterlife communication. And so Mark created this certification process. Now, what propelled him into this was after the release of one of his books called Soul Shift, a bunch of people started coming to him to ask him for good mediums to use. And they wanted someone that was trustworthy, who was affordable and didn't have long wait lists. So Mark thought to himself, there's got to be more mediums out there who are not commonly known that could be verified and used as a recommendation to all these people who seemingly needed help. So this certification program has been going on for nearly 10 years, and it's such a rigorous process that I think maybe only 40 mediums have been certified since it's been around.
Wow.
So it's quite, it's
small
quite
database.
Small. It's quite tough, but but if you think about the people who would be reaching out for these mediums, they'd be the likes of a grieving parent or a grieving widow who just want answers to their questions, you know. So, but I mean, I guess just what I really wanted to highlight here was that there are people out there there's psychic mediums out there who can communicate with loved ones on the other side, and they can be verified in a way. So just do your homework, and
that's good to know. I think that's a very important point.
Yeah.
We've spent the last nearly hour and a half now, and we still haven't exhausted.
So if you're still
the
here
topic
with us now listening, I commend you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sitting with us as we work through this topic. It is very broad, and we hope to talk about it a lot more.
Absolutely.
In the future. We discussed our personal beliefs, what we think of the spirit world and the afterlife. We had some good chats about ghosts and karma, mediums, and also trapped energies and being stuck in the in-between. We touched on psychic abilities in children and family members, and even some studies on ESP. And then, very important, make sure that you are working with someone trustworthy if you are trying to contact the other side. I think this conversation is very important because when we remove the mystery of it and make it more an everyday idea that we can all be comfortable with, that can empower people to not be afraid, and also to begin to discover how they can reclaim their own abilities.
Exactly. Totally.
We both don't claim to have all the answers, but just by working through this topic, we hope to light a fire for people so they'll be inspired to learn more about the world around them, both physical and metaphysical, and most importantly, themselves. Because if you search very deep within yourself, you will find your own answers that you need in this incarnation, in this moment. And remember, the path to your best reality is in your hands to create when you become conscious.